We are 25% of the way through the 2022 fantasy football season. In this video, I'll be taking the information we've gathered through the first 4 weeks of this year and breaking down my top 30 rest of season running back rankings here for this fantasy football season. Of course, if you're new around here, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. We've got our rest of season wide receivers video out today as well, in addition to our week 5 fantasy football playlist with all of our information and advice for this week's game. So check all that stuff out. Let me know any questions you've got for me in the comment section of today's episode, and let's dive in. All right, I'm using literally the exact same tiers list that I use for the weekly positional rankings. Now, the reason we're doing a tiers list, I think it's helpful at times to kind of group players together, talk through them and their situations, and again, compare likenesses and differences between the other tiers. Of course, just follow along as we go here. Left to right is the order of the numeric rankings, so Saquon Barkley is our running back 1 for the rest of the season. Follow that on to the right, and then down for the next tier, left to right, so on and so forth. You guys get the point. Elite running back 1s here, starting out with a tier of players that are most desired and you would prefer to have in your fantasy lineups, of course, for the rest of this season. Now, what you'll notice here is that this is a fairly big elite running backs 1 tier. Last season, I think it would have been just JT at the, being the king of the hill. And we had in our receivers episode actually one of those players. However, I didn't really make any edits to this tiers breakdown because I felt that these guys could be categorized likewise in a very similar format to what we use for those weekly lineup videos. So for Saquon Barkley here, and again, so one last note on that before we move on is the fact that the drop-off between these players, each of the 6 here, is really not that huge in the grand scheme of things. Now, you can make an argument that kind of the last 2 players here, Austin Ekeler was the main one I really went back and forth with, and you could make the argument maybe Austin Ekeler deserves his own little tier sandwiched in between himself and the next group of players here, but if that's the hang-up, then I understand your guys' thoughts and takes on that there. But again, the drop-off between each of these players moving from left to right just seems so minuscule to me, and then there is more of a noticeable drop off between this and the next tier. So Saquon, getting into the first player now. Finally, that was a lot of talking. 83% snap share or higher in each of the first 4 games of this season. And he's got a 25 plus number of opportunities in 3 out of his 4 games. So an absolute established workhorse. The reason the snap count percentage matters for me is because I want to see you on the field, and that points to indicative workhorse status. Having a guy over that 80% threshold is such an elite and valuable number to have there. And then 25 or more touches. I mean, if this guy's staying healthy, one of the most explosive and electric backs in the league. He is really the focal point and just savior of this Giants offense. He's really what they hang their hat on at the end of the day. So Jonathan Taylor moving into our second running back here. Flashed his elite running back 1 finish from the 2021 season in week 1. However, we have not seen that since. He's out here for week 5 with an ankle injury, got that rolled up in week 4. So actually, I'll say this up front right now. I have not seen Thursday Night Football yet. This is being recorded. We are currently about 45 minutes from the start of Thursday Night Football, so I've got to get this episode on the roll here because I wanted to, get your guys' questions answered beforehand, but we haven't seen that game, so not really sure how Naheem Hines did yet, and of course, the other Melvin Gordon, the Broncos backfield, but he's out for tonight's game. You're seeing this the following morning, though. Don't really want to record this after the fact because it'll just be a super long night for me, and I've got stuff I got to get up for in the morning, but he looks, he's a workhorse. This offense needs to be a little bit more stable, though. They're actually in the bottom 3 in terms of overall team offensive production. They need to give him the ball more. They're overly pass-dependent and run-first situations. Lots of head-scratching calls here. Not sure I love Matt Ryan right now, but I think that at the end of the day, things will be fine here. Christian McCaffrey here, number 3 running back, 80% of the snap share or better in every single game. He's got a couple of games over the 90% threshold as well. So again, uber established running back 1 status here for the rest of this season moving forward. Again, if he's healthy, that's the main issue with him and Saquon Barkley. If those 2 are out there, they're doing great things. CMC's been out there, and this is literally the only dude for this entire Panthers offense that has any sort of sense or capability of being a productive chain mover for this offense. So they need to feed him the football. He's had 23 targets in this season so far. So he's doing all the dynamic things we ask of him to do every single week this season. He's being a playmaker, but again, the offense overall could hold him back at the end of the day. Nick Chubb here, a guy who, obviously I've had my gripes about, but he is balling this season. and is absolutely the most consistent running back in fantasy football right now. He is actually today the running back one across, I'm pretty sure, all three formats: standard, half PPR, and full PPR. And consistency's been the king here. He's got 14 or more points in half PPR every single game to start out this season. And whether or not he's scoring touchdowns hasn't had a big indicative outcome on his week-to-week production, because his yardage and yards per carry has been so good, hovering around that 5 yards per carry at minimum, or 4.75 or better nearly every game this season. So he's balling out. He's doing tremendous things. This team has been very run first with Jacoby Brissett under center. Hopefully that continues to stay, present here as we progress towards Deshaun Watson's return. Still a long way before that thing happens, literally week 12, so we are a third of the way to that marker. But with this offensive line play, with his ability as a rusher, he is doing things that, this could be a career season for Nick Chubb here. Derrick Henry starting to bounce back the last couple of weeks here, looked like the king again, starting to get more pass catching involvement, which is key here, especially for this team that's had some negative game scripts. Now they've had things bounce their direction the last couple of games, which is really what started this resurgence here. And hopefully Tennessee can play some tighter games, or blow teams out as well and get those premium rushing attempts down the stretch of contests, because the game script is really the one thing that I think holds Henry back. He's the goal line back. He's catching passes in spurts, in occasions for contests here. So it all kind of comes down to that. But he's been very productive the last 2 weeks, 20-plus point outings, and looking like that viable elite running back one play. And then Austin Ekeler here. Again, I was very hesitant and skeptical. You know what? As a matter of fact, out of respect for the other names in this category, let's make a new tier for our boy Austin Ekeler here. We're going to name this the Ekeler tier, and we're actually going to move him down on the fly decision I'm making here. I don't know if he deserves the respect to be among those top 5 names at this current point in time. Now, I think that non-Austin Ekeler owners are going to agree with the decision I just made here, and you kind of heard me foreshadowing this in the intro of today's episode. Didn't really know I was going to take that plunge there, but I've decided to do that. But Austin Ekeler owners might have a problem with me bouncing out of there after a 30-point week last week. I still have questions that I want to be answered. Ekeler is still a great dynamic pass-catching back that can score touchdowns, but I need to see more work on the goal line, like the literal goal line. Yes, I know he scored 3 touchdowns. I know he looked freaking awesome against Houston last week, but they're all 10-plus yards. What does that mean? They're still not true goal line carries. Like, is he going to be the guy inside the 5-yard line, or is it going to continue to be Sony Michel? If that's the case, and it's some weird head-scratching anomaly by this offensive coaching staff, then so be it. And I would absolutely love nothing more than to rank Austin Ekeler as a top 3 fantasy running back for this season, because I loved him during draft season. I love the player. He actually cares about your fantasy lineup, which is like actually refreshing. So by all means, I'm an Austin Ekeler fan. I'm not trying to hate on him here by literally mid-video bumping him down my tiers list. But there are concerns and reasons why I don't want to put him there, which are very viable because of the fact that touchdown production is so key and critical. Literally look at Nick Chubb. He scored, was it 3 touchdowns in 4 games? Like, those are giving his high floor numbers via his rushing production and putting him into RB1 level stratospheres here because of the fact that he's scoring those 6-point plays. So big deal, but let's move into the next tier here. All right, 4 guys to go in this tier for today's episode. Joe Mixon kicking it off, our RB7 right now. Certified workhorse, 19-plus rushing attempts in 3 out of 4 contests. That's a 75% conversion rate, and he has a 73% or higher snap count percentage in 3 out of the 4 games this season. Leonard Fournette here, the schedule opens up. Tampa's offense looks to be rolling here. I think that the first month of the season was the toughest point of any given situation for this schedule. I think moving forward here, they continue to produce better numbers, and that obviously helps Leonard Fournette, gets them into better situations, goal line opportunities, all that great stuff. Dalvin Cook here rushed 17 or more times in 75% of the first 4 weeks here, so 3 out of 4 there. Only 1 rushing touchdown. This offense has been a bit pass happy here, and he hasn't nearly been as efficient as I'd like to see. Now, a lot of this comes down to play calling, coaching, all that type of stuff, so we're kind of at the mercy of what Kevin O'Connell wants to do for this offense. I still think he's a very high level or potential to be a high producing player here, but at the end of the day, the numbers right now haven't necessarily be where they want, or haven't been where we want them to be. So we're going to have to work with that and just kind of go on the fly with how they're putting him out in that offense. And we have seen some Alexander Madison sprinkled in here as well with the early season shoulder injury that he sustained. So hopefully his snap count percentage continues to be high enough to get those workhorse level carries, and then he can start ripping some runs off and being the OG Dalvin Cook that we're used to seeing. And then DeAndre Swift here, for me, he's a top 5 running back when he's playing. Plain and simple though, he's out until week 7. We'll have missed weeks 4, 5, and 6. The bye week is week 6 though. So waiting game, patience there. Into the bubble running back ones now. We've got Aaron Jones, J-Rob, and Alvin Kamara here, just 3 guys in this grouping. For Aaron Jones, he's a super efficient player. This is a guy that's been phenomenal on the ground. He has actually averaged 6.5 yards per carry or more in 3 out of the 4 contests to start this season. He just needs touchdowns to get him into that ceiling category, and that's something that's still kind of murky waters here. We don't really know if A.J. Dillon's the preferred guy on the goal line or if it is Aaron Jones, because this offense, isn't necessarily getting down to the goal line every time. Sometimes they're scoring on 8 to 7 yard passes, or they're ripping big plays down the sideline. Aaron Jones doing this, of course, and contributing to that, but that's been a function and a factor here of this team. So all things to consider there. Aaron Jones is highly capable of catching the football. And again, like we said, 6.5 plus yards per carry is elite in terms of your overall efficiency. So opportunities and red zone opportunities, of course, are what's going to make or break his week in a given contest. Last week, didn't have the best fantasy game, but rushed again, I believe it was 8.88 yards per carry and had over 100 yards rushing. So all that great stuff is kind of at factor every week. J-Rob, this is a guy who the snap count percentage hasn't been great, but the workhorse numbers and the rushing category, that is key. The rushing territory, ETN's been the pass catching back, but J-Rob has been the dude on the goal line, scoring the touchdowns, literally getting all the valuable touches has been J-Rob outside of the passing game, and ETN hasn't been getting enough of the rushing work to offset some of the lacking areas he's had in the red zone. So J-Rob is clearly a top 12 option for me. We've got him as the RB12 here, but is considered a running back 1 based off of the production we've had from him the first couple of weeks of the season or the first month or so of the year. I think he'll bounce back from the sluggish 8 rush performance against Philadelphia in week 4 and quickly leave that in the past with a pretty easy and light schedule for this team finishing in 4th place last year. And then Alvin Kamara, look, the ribs need to get better. Sounds like they're expecting him to be back to his former self here, but we need to see passing game opportunities. This isn't a traditional workhorse. He's not going to be a 20-plus attempt on the ground type of guy here. He's never ran for 1,000 yards, so he's got to do a lot of damage in terms of scoring touchdowns and catching passes and being super efficient. I don't know if the Saints offense is built at this point in time. I just plain and simple don't know, because I have question marks about this 1-3 team. I see flashes of awesomeness, and then I see flashes of just awfulness. So we have to find some middle ground here. If they can do that, I think AK, sustains, again, some weeks as a top 12 option, some weeks as an elite RB2. As we get into the elite running backs 2 territory here, if you guys are enjoying today's episode, smash that like button, subscribe if you're around here, and check out the links in the description of today's episode. Today's episode is brought to you guys by Underdog Fantasy. Head on over there, sign up, use promo code SFS. Again, that's code SFS, and deposit $10 or more. They'll match your money up to $100. And with that, you get access to my website, sizzlefantasy.com, through this season's Super Bowl, weekly rankings, lineup advice from myself and my DMs in the community Discord server, and rest of season rankings published for all positions, top 48 running backs and receivers, top 32 quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses, of course, once again I publish these. So we're just posting running backs and wide receivers here on YouTube. All that other stuff can be accessed again for free every single week through this season's Super Bowl when you use code SFS and deposit on Underdog Fantasy. This week, or here we go, for week 5, back into the rest of the season rankings. Breece Hall is my running back 14 here. He is one of 6 running backs to score double-digit points in fantasy scoring every single week of this season. He's got 27 targets and 15 receptions, 6 targets coming in Zach Wilson's debut this year. He looks to be off to the races as a breakout running back, a workhorse for this team. Took the full plunge to a 66% snap share this past week in favor of Michael Carter at 44%. And look, he's the guy I expect to get the goal line carries. He is the better, more talented running back here. Definitely someone I want to have on my teams as an elite running back too. I think he's putting up top 12 numbers on a weekly basis by the end of this season. Najee Harris here. This has been the struggle bus. It's a potential workhorse play, but a terrible offense, an awful offensive line, and a rookie quarterback. The rookie quarterback doesn't seem like he wants to shovel passes underneath to Najee in the passing game. Red flag, red flag, red flag. You'd think I'm a referee with all this laundry, but Najee is just someone that I am out on. We have him in the literally sell low episode this week. Like, I'm not really thinking that there's much of an opportunity unless he gets 3 goal line carries and scores 3 touchdowns for him to really turn the season back on track. So hoping the best for you, Najee. He's still one of the most talented, dynamic running backs in the game, but the situation is brutal. James Conner here, ankle injury has been plaguing him to start this season. However, this is a former 3-down back this past season after Chase Edmonds got injured that can really do it all for this team. A goal line back, a capable pass catcher, and hopefully week 6 with Hopkins coming back, you can open up the offense a little bit. And if they're just able to do things at a sufficient and average level, I think James Conner can put up solid, potentially top 12 running back numbers in a week-to-week basis. However, right now, the floor and ceiling have been a little bit undesirable because of A, the injury. He had to A, get healthy from that, have somewhat of a pitch count, and then B, just not being able to cut as effectively or be as an explosive of a player. We've seen Kyler Murray get these annoying freaking quarterback power rushes or QB sweeps off the right side of the line of scrimmage, scoring touchdowns with Conner as the lead blocker. Just hand the ball to the huge guy. Don't put your 5'7" quarterback in harm's way and get yourself in a tussle there should he end up getting popped. And then Dameon Pierce here. We've been saying this all summer long. He's like 2020 J-Rob. Now, J-Rob's been actually, he may be exceeding his point per game production from that 2020 season this year, at least through 3 weeks he probably was. But Pierce here is a workhorse in the bad offense. He finally took over that backfield in week 3, I want to say. Week 3 and week 4, he's balled out here. Entering into week 5, he's got himself a decent but still a little bit tougher matchup. But however, cutting back to things here, Pierce is a guy that I just think if you get into negative game scripts, he's not going to have the best ability to catch passes. Rex Burkhead has kind of been the 3rd down back for this team, so I have my skepticisms about that there. They play Jacksonville this week. They're 7.5-point underdogs, so hopefully he can stay in that contest. It's a division game, so I'm thinking it might be able to have a chance to be closer than expected. However, that is the issue and concern with him here. Strong running backs too now. I know what you guys are thinking, and as I mentioned earlier in today's episode, there might be an outlier here, and that is the fact that Melvin Gordon makes this tier. There's a potential he could get injured. There's a potential he could get benched. There's a potential that they don't trust him because of the fumbles. I'm placing him here pre-Thursday Night Football. So again, if something wild happens and this looks completely off, then just know there'll be adjustments, and maybe I'll comment something about that when I get around to it. But for now, as of the time of recording, this is the information we have. So Miles Sanders rising up my rankings right now. The opportunity share has been blossoming here for him this season, finally getting the goal line opportunities in an elite rushing and overall offense. Love what I'm seeing there. Efficient play as well. Josh Jacobs, 84% of the opportunity share in the Raiders backfield. That is phenomenal. He finally backed it up and killed the Broncos defense last week. Awesome, awesome stuff to see. If he's getting that much work, you can at least trust the floor. Melvin Gordon here, no more Javonte Williams, out for the season with an ACL. I think he's a solid top 24 play in a given week. Of course, tougher matchups might be rough. The Broncos offense heading into this week 5 matchup has been terrible, but giving him the benefit of the doubt here. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 5 touchdowns in 4 games, his best snap count percentage of the season. I have my skepticism still. I'm not totally sold on him, but Kansas City's offense is productive. He's a good playmaker. He can catch passes out of the backfield, and he has been a nice option for this team. So if he continues getting work in that fashion and used the way he has been so far this year, he might just be a top 24 play every week. Now, some of you may feel this ranking and assessment of him here is low. I would add him as an RB3, I'll be honest, if last week didn't happen and the touchdowns didn't continue falling into his lap. So maybe the touchdown production is just gaudy here to start this season. But it at bare minimum, the fact that he had his best game in week 5 and kind of addressed the concerns I had made him move up my rankings a solid 7 to 8 positions here. Well, we're running back 2s now. My running back 22 to start here is J.K. Dobbins. Now, there's a lot of question marks and unknowns here. You've got an explosive and elusive running back. I've actually mentioned this and kind of dropped this in the last couple of videos. Heading into the 2020 class, this was my top running back talent and prospect over Jonathan Taylor, CEH. So I love the player here, but the situation still gives me some nerves. You've got a situation where the eventual return of Gus Bus Edwards may take away some goal line opportunities. You've also got a guy who he did actually catch, I believe it was 4 passes or was targeted 4 times in last week's game. So addressing some of my concerns there, but I'm not overly expecting him to be super involved in the pass catching game out of the backfield on a weekly basis from Baltimore. And last week, to be plain and simple, he only had 60 plus yards from scrimmage. He scored 2 touchdowns on takeaways by the Baltimore defense in Buffalo Bills territory, like deep in Bills territory. We're talking like in the red zone. So he was set up primed for 2 scoring opportunities. We plain and simple just have a thin file on J.K. Dobbins right now. Need to see more. I'm not going to be overly skeptical here or optimistic. So at the end of the day, you're going to get kind of a lukewarm reading from me right now. Having him as a bubble RB2, could see himself pop into either of these other running back 2 categories though. A.J. Dillon, this is a guy who I see as a limited ceiling option right now, but a high floor play for RB2 positions in lineups. Now, the reason I think his ceiling is low because A, his efficiency is capped to an extent. He is one of the highest overall percentages of between the tackles rushing attempts, which means they're not getting him on the perimeter of the offense and really letting him break out for big runs. They are using him as a thumper and as a physical asset, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and that might be good for his goal line use. But this Packers team, like I said, since week 1 hasn't really gotten down there, and they've been scoring from distance. So if he's not going to see at least one crack at the goal line every week, that's going to give, issues. And this isn't a super high volume production offense right now, or a high, flying offense, a high scoring offense. Jesus Christ, I couldn't think of the word there. But it overall is a situation where you do feel comfortable enough in this situation to give him nods, in the starting lineup on a weekly basis. Montgomery really is only down here because of the injury. We don't know when he'll be back. Now, Thursday, so the day I'm recording this episode, he did have a limited practice, which is good news. But, he did miss a game. We don't know if he'll miss another, if he'll be limited, what the case might be. Chicago's offense, though, game script is usually something I buy into a lot here with a lot of NFL teams. What the Bears have shown us this year, they don't really care about game script. They're going to keep running the ball even when they're getting smoked and blown off the face of the earth. So for Montgomery's fantasy owners, that's something to be encouraged about. Look back at week 2 against the Green Bay Packers, down 17. They are just pounding the rock all the way down the field. So in like the fourth quarter. So Montgomery, very productive, very sound and overall skilled player. But again, there are limitations in terms of the offense's ability to produce points, getting, premium scoring territory. And Khalil Herbert, let's be honest about that. Can't move past this without talking about him here. He's been balling out, and he deserves some of that team's snap share. So I wouldn't expect Montgomery to come back here and have an 80% snap count percentage in this offense like he did prior to that. And then Ramondre Stevenson here. You got a 3 straight week streak right now as the highest snap count of any player in this Patriots backfield. So really it's just between him and Damian Harris, but still matters to me. Having the most amount of snaps shows me that the coaching staff trusts you. In situational play this past week, Belichick had him in an overtime, third down situations to win the game potentially. Look, I just trust him more. Damian Harris has been the goal line back and been getting touchdowns, and I think he has 3 touchdowns in 4 weeks here. The 1 week he didn't score a touchdown, he didn't have viable numbers, and the floor wasn't good either. Stevenson, his pass catching involvement and his efficiency is giving them those opportunities. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him take over this backfield by the season's end and be a very, very viable play for lineups here the rest of the season moving forward. All right, finishing up today's episode with our last tier here, the running back 3s. Starting off with Kareem Hunt. Now you've got yourself kind of the competition between A.J. Dillon, Stevenson, Kareem Hunt, and Jamal Williams here of who is really the best handcuff in fantasy football, or who is the best reserve option to have. I'll still stick with Kareem Hunt here because I do think that this offensive line is so elite. If something were to happen to Nick Chubb, he's such a good option to have. Now, Chubb's kind of put him back in his place here. We haven't seen him vulture nearly as many touchdowns since week 1 that we saw happen last year, and Chubb's been able to get the benefit of the doubt in that area of the field. However, Hunt's still so talented, so dynamic, and of course, if he gets those opportunities, is going to be one of the better players to have as a reserve option for your team. Devin Singletary, I have my gripes, I have my concerns. I honestly don't trust any Bills backfield mates except for Josh Allen, and that's, of course, a joke because, I have literally called him their best running back at times. But Devin Singletary's had 16 or more opportunities, a lot of them coming in the pass game in back-to-back contests here. Week 1 and 2 are pretty ugly for him, but if they're going to be blowing teams out, they're going to be running the football late, and that means Singletary is going to get some opportunities here. He's a low-end starter to a flex option for me. Again, don't love playing him, but it is what it is here. Jamal Williams, again, could be the best handcuff in fantasy. I'm sure some of you guys make the argument for that, and I will not discredit you for that. He's got 6 touchdowns in 4 games played here, and in the games he scored touchdowns, it's been 3 of them. He scored 2 touchdowns. He's doubled up in each of those 3 contests. He hasn't played 50% of the snap share, so he's a goal line monster. A guy that physically is just a pound-for-pound slugger. He is not afraid to play tough and run downhill at guys, and he'll catch the football in space as well. So when Swift is out, he's shown us this high-powered Lions offense here. I don't think anyone expected that. They've been putting up points, hanging those left and right. He's been balling out for him. So if Swift's out of the lineups, you've got yourself a fringe RB1 in any given circumstance here, then a guy that could easily punch the ball in for 6 and score a big touchdown for you. So don't discredit that there for Jamal Williams. And then Rashad Penny here. You've got the eventual situation that, their second-round pick, Ken Walker's probably going to touch the ball a little bit more than he is right now. However, he is coming off his best game of the season here here, over 150 yards total from scrimmage, 2 total touchdowns. The one issue I have with Rashad Penny, besides the fact that I think that eventually Walker will assume more of a role in this offense, is the fact that he's got 5 targets in 4 games. You need more opportunity than 1.25 targets per game. That is not cutting it. This is a Seattle offense right now that I think is a bit of fool's gold. They're outproducing themselves. Yeah, Geno Smith's got the highest passing completion percentage of any quarterback in NFL history through 4 weeks. Whatever. Love Geno Smith. He's a fun guy, but probably not going to continue doing that the rest of the season. If he does, I'd be flabbergasted. And they're not hanging 48 points again anytime soon like they did against Detroit, the league's worst defense last week. So miss me with all the passing game involvement. Doesn't matter here. There is exceptions to the situation. Rashad Penny is not one of them. If he starts catching passes, power to him, and I'll clap him up and hype him up here. But right now it's an issue. And if you get into a bad game script as a bad football team, that's what this team is. They're 2-2. I get it. They're 500, but they are a bad football team. They're a bottom 5 team in this league. Bad game scripts are going to kill his fantasy value if they're not running the football and not throwing it to him either. And then CPAT here, placed on the IR, has not served his first game yet of the injured reserve designation. He has to miss at least 4 games on the IR. So we're not going to see CPAT back until week 9? He'll be out through week 8 here. So he does have 2 20-point performances so far this season, coming off a 9.8-point game in half PPR scoring in which he was injured. The knee, of course, the area of concern. So CPAT's a beast. He was getting all the rushing attempts and putting up touchdowns and playing really good football. But, of course, stuff happens, injuries happen, of course, and the unavailability is what knocks him down this tiers list. So there you have it, my top 30 running backs for the rest of the 2022 fantasy football season. Remember, if you guys enjoyed, smash the like button, subscribe, comment down below your questions, other stuff you want to know from me, and use code SFS when you sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Get access to my rankings, weekly rankings, and rest of season rankings, as well as my DMs on Discord to ask me all of your fantasy questions all season long. So appreciate you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.